personal business. That's not the type of person I am, and we definitely don't want to do that with the Mississippi
I don't think that
newspaper.
there's anything that you can ask that we'd be uncomfortable with. So
Okay. Okay.
fire away.
Super
Okay.
regular.
And I'm gonna get a few shots. I'm not here. Well, I tell you what. Let me get it. Cause I got a grandpa do this
Yeah, I know how that
in
is.
about 20 minutes.
Uh-huh. You got a real boss.
And so let me just
I need to
get
sit up.
Yeah, she
I got blue on.
I thought it was.
she can tell when I'm
I
I'm
do have
running
a
a
Tuskegee
little
pen on today. I don't never wear it.
late.
Honestly, I left the house without a pen on. It was in my.
Felt naked.
I'm supposed to be wearing a pen. So.
Now go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
So my first initial question, of course, is how long have you all been married?
We've been
11
married
years.
11 years,
Okay.
but we've known each other. We dated 6 years prior to being
Okay.
married.
Okay.
We were living in 2 different states, and so we were getting closer to each other.
Okay. Okay.
And we've known each other since kindergarten.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because we're
that's
5.
sweet.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. How did you all meet? I guess in kindergarten.
You want to tell
Okay, so first of all, we did meet in kindergarten.
Okay.
But we have 2 conflicting accounts
Okay.
of how that meetup went down. But we were in the same kindergarten class
Okay.
at North Jackson Elementary School,
Okay.
and his family moved into our community. So back then it was called North Colony.
Okay.
Today it's what?
Carrington
Carrington
Place.
Homes. It's still there,
Okay.
right off Beasley Road. And so we lived in that little townhome community.
Mhm.
His family moved there.
Okay.
In the same cul-de-sac.
Yeah, in the same
Mhm.
little cul-de-sac that we lived in, same little court they used to call them
Okay.
back then. And so we were in class together. I remember meeting you like in class, because
It may have been when we first met.
and then we realized that we lived in the same neighborhood, which was just
Okay.
cool for kids to see
Mhm.
someone from
Right.
school also in your neighborhood
Right,
that you could
right.
play with. So we played together.
Mhm.
There was like this little grassy knoll between the rows of our townhouses, and so we rode bikes. We walked back and forth to school together with our older siblings, and so that's how we met, and that's the extent of my account
Okay.
of how we met. He goes all into, I had a crush on a little boy that played the drums,
Mhm.
which I was obviously not checking for little boys
Yes.
in kindergarten.
Mhm.
I just
I'm
I
not
had
gonna
a
say.
friend.
I'm not gonna say any names because I know the
Please
little
don't
boy's
say
name
any names.
and everything else.
it's unnecessary.
But there's a little boy in our class,
This is alleged, all of this.
and I'll tell you later.
Now they like, we gotta know.
Who was a drumming prodigy,
Mm.
essentially.
Mm.
And at 5 years old, he could play those drums, right?
Mm.
And all the little programs they could have roll his little 5-year-old self out and have him play drums. So all little girls just
The
thought that
hating
was
began early.
yeah. All little girls thought it was so cool. So I asked my
we
parents
did.
for a drum for Christmas,
Okay.
and so I got a drum. They just didn't come with lessons, so I never I never learned how to play.
Okay.
But I always, this was my first friend in Mississippi. She was my first friend, and I had the biggest crush on her, but she wasn't checking for me. That's essentially it. So I tell everybody, she say this is my
Okay.
dad joke.
This is his favorite dad joke.
Back
Please.
then she didn't want me. Now I'm hot. She
Okay.
all on me,
Please
right?
don't print that.
She just needed them skills.
Oh, my goodness.
but in terms of like bringing more color to how we start dating,
Right, right. Because that was
years.
a couple
So
decades later.
we believe, in the Lord having guided us
Mhm.
in this relationship and being at the center of our relationship. So we really feel it wasn't by coincidence that he kept us close enough, but far enough apart until, the moment was perfect in his eyes for us to be together or to start
right.
dating. And so, just tracking it as much as I can. And if you need to record anything too, you can. Okay. We went to elementary school together, but we both left the school that we started off
Okay.
at. I ended up transferring to what was then Davis Magnet. We now know it as Obama Magnet. She left that school and went to APAC. right?
Right. It was Power then as Wells now.
And we love the fact that our name of our schools is Obama
and Wells.
And Wells now.
That's beautiful.
And then, so we would see each other like, when there were district-wide field trips, we would still see each other and say, hey, you remember me? Because I had moved out of the community that we lived in into another neighborhood. So we left each other's neighborhood and went to different schools.
Where did the drama go? I'm just playing.
He went to school with me.
with
He went to Callaway. You know who it is. I'm gonna tell you.
A non-factor.
I think I know who it is.
Yeah, you think you know who it is? Yeah. So.
But we've known each
good
other.
Good people, right?
Great. Yeah.
So after we left elementary school, we then in junior high, I went to the critical point. I went to St. Joseph Middle School when it was where St. Richard's is now, right? And she was at Chastain, and we were separated by basically Northside Drive, and the Northside Library that we now know, formerly the Tisdale Library.
Right.
All of the kids that were like after school would go there. Right.
That was the meetup.
That was the meet. So I used to see her at the Northside Library all the time. And be like, hey, And so then high school. My freshman year, I was at Murrah my freshman year, and she was at Murrah. And one of her best friends rode my bus, and so she would get on the bus and ride it to her friend's house, and I'd be on the bus with her. She really didn't say that much to me. She's always been an electric personality and someone people gravitate to. So I remember her being loud at the record.
Wait, I like how diplomatic we were at work. She was loud. We were a lively bunch.
But I remember one day, she realized I was on the basketball team. I think I was coming out. I had finished practice and then got on the bus. She's like, Shockway, you on the basketball team? I was like, yeah. She's like, that kind of make you cute, right? So I wasn't cute until she knew that I played basketball.
Lord,
I had made a team.
I had blinders on my eyes. It was too early.
But then I left Murrah and went to Callaway. And so you know Jackson. While we were at different schools, Jackson's interconnected, and particularly Murrah and Callaway, we know a lot of the same people. And then college, I went to Tuskegee and she went to Spelman, and by coincidence, Tuskegee and Morehouse, Spelman's sister school, if you will, not officially, but their sister school, Tuskegee and Morehouse have a big rivalry. And so she came to Tuskegee one game because Morehouse was playing in Tuskegee.
Basketball, yeah.
And I saw her at the game.
Which is really incredible because like Tuskegee is a huge campus. If you've ever been to it, it's sprawling. And so even though most of the student body that night was kind of concentrated around the gymnasium, there were so many people there, folks who had traveled from Atlanta to support Morehouse, and then all these Tuskegee folks. And so the fact that we almost immediately bumped into each other there, but he had these twists in his head.
I was trying to grow locks and she didn't appreciate them.
They were not.
So she wasn't paying me no attention. She was like, hey, whatever.
It wasn't his best look. But I just kind of in passing was like, oh, hey, and told my girls there, I was like, oh, I know him from home. And then that was it, right? It was really just this very quick, fleeting moment. There was no phone number exchange. There was no longer conversation. But again, that's kind of it goes back to what he says about we fundamentally, unequivocally believe the Lord kept us in each other's orbit without us being bonded together when it was too soon, right? When we weren't mature enough or when we weren't ready to really take care of one another's hearts. So just kind of kept us on each other's minds. And for me, it never occurred to me that I would date this man. He's just a friend from home. We all had homeboys that we've known. I knew him since I was 5, so it never occurred to me that could be the trajectory of our relationship. And looking back, I'm like, why, girl? What were you doing? Because he's so fine, but and smart. But it's like, later on
Yeah, and so I'll wrap this up because I know you got more questions. But so then graduate school. So I went to Houston, Texas for law school, she was still in Atlanta. She was at Georgia State getting her master's. And one of my best friends, guy I grew up across the street from, Brent Beeman, was getting married in Atlanta. And he invited me to the wedding. And I had just seen her on Facebook, right? And I knew she was in Atlanta. And so I reached out to her because, you know, I always had a crush on her, right? Like always. She used to work at the Buckle. I used to come in the Buckle. My play cousins knew that I was gonna go in the Buckle every time I went to North Park. I never bought anything at Buckle. That's what I just would go to see her.
Right,
I
which
looked
was
through
like
stuff.
not appealing because
good.
I worked on commission.
I ain't had no money, and I gave her my number, but that comes later.
That comes later, yes.
So, you know, when I knew I was coming to Atlanta, I reached out to her on Facebook. I was like, "Hi, do you remember me?" And she's like, "Of course, your name is Shogwe Lumumba. You don't forget that, right?" And I told her that I was coming to Atlanta. She said, "Okay, when you get here, look me up. You know, we'll maybe get together. Just give me a call." So she gave me her number. And when I got to Atlanta, I was tied up with, you know, my friend and everything, and I never called her, right? And so then I came back to Houston. I reached out. I was like, "Oh, I didn't call you." And she's like, "Well, that's okay. I changed my number anyway," right? Like she just happened to be switching phones.
I was upgrading my phone.
Right, so she switched phones. And so from that point on, we started talking, and we started talking regularly.
Just on the phone?
Yeah, just on the phone.
Yeah. And
then my sister was giving birth to my nephew. And so I flew to New York from Houston to see my sister give birth to my nephew. And on the way back, I had a long layover in Atlanta. And so when we realized I had a long layover, we called the airline. And we told her, I think we told some fib. Well, I told some fib. I said this was my fiance or something, and I was.
It's post 9/11, so you can't go to the gate
unless you flying out
with special conditions.
So they gave her a pass to get through the gate and
get through the security and get the gate.
So when I came off the plane,
which is wild,
I didn't see her. And she was apparently hiding behind a pole. She now says,
because listen, we had been talking on the phone for 2, maybe 3 months. And, you know, the frequency of those phone calls started to pick up over the months. So at first it was like maybe every other day, but then it was like every day. Then it was mornings and then, you know, all that stuff. And so I was anxious I hadn't seen him in person since we flew by each other at Tuskegee.
When I had the twist in his head. Apparently she needed to make sure I had no twist in my head.
He had cuter pictures on Facebook. So I hid behind one of the larger posts because I'm like, I really like him, but just in case, you know, that was my security. That was my security. Like if I could run, like this could all, you know, it didn't have to happen here. But he got off the airplane and he was striking. And
our first date was in the Atlanta airport, sharing French fries together. We had French fries.
Where are they from? Is it Steak Escape?
No, what's the name of that? Hot dog spot. Nathan's. Nathan's fries.
You remember that?
Yes, I do.
I think I've eaten Nathan's since then. Yeah. That was our first date.
Yeah.
I love how you all are still smiling after 11 years and sharing your story.
She's gorgeous to me and she's my best friend.
Yes, so. I see the glow on her face. I see the glow on your face. So when did you all know after the initial phone conversation, she exchanged French fries with each other? And I'm thinking that the subject of this article may be love is in the air because it became.
Oh, I love that.
Because
of your parents.
That was on my mind before I actually got here, so I received it as confirmation.
Yeah.
But how did you know that she was the wife for you? And how did you know that he was the husband for you? Because I'm sure you both had many lined up.
Many.
Well,
as far as people being interested, not that you was talking.
Yeah.
Well, I think that at its root, you know, at that time and even now, you know, I just feel like this is my best friend, right? Like, I know Ebony and she knows me, right? And so that friendship was key.
Okay.
But going deeper, you know, just finding this person that I felt helped me grow, right? Was a crown to my head that I feel that I can learn from each and every day is inspiring to me. And I can tell you that I have been thinking about it, you know, up until this point and you know, really pondering, you know, whether I was ready to make the leap of proposing to her, you know, down the line. And then, you know, the absolute event that I said, I can wait no longer. I don't know if she knows this.
I'm waiting. I
Yeah.
don't know if I know this.
I was in a car accident.
Oh, okay.
I was in a bad car accident on I-220. I was headed to a party that she was at. It was a going away party for one of her friends, and she was in town. It had been raining that day, and I got rear-ended by a car, and it sent me into the median. And I don't know. I guess I called, like I had a concussion. Like I don't even remember. So I believe I called her to let her know. But I don't fundamentally remember all of this. And so I later learned that she came to like the exit before she could get to that and ran across the highway to get to me. And I don't know how she found her way in the ambulance with me, right? And went with me to the hospital, and it was
behind.
Yeah, okay. I thought you were in. Okay. She was with me, and it was really critical because, and you know, I just think of, you know, just the way the Lord works, right? Because it's symbolic in many ways. Right. My father was out of town. You know, my mother died when I was in college, right? So the only, you know, blood relative that lives in Jackson or lived in Jackson with me at the time would have been my father. I couldn't reach my father for anything in the world. He was busy. So I'm in this hospital. She's with me, right? Her parents take me in, you know, have me stay at their house. I'm literally concussed. Like, I'm talking crazy. Like, her dad messes because I tell him at one point, I was like, because I had a concussion in high school playing basketball. I hit my head. And I was like, this is my second concussion. I was like, my football career is done. Like I ain't never played football. And they're like, this is what I told you, right? Like,
it was lunacy.
But, you know, just, I felt like she was a part of my family and a part of my life. And that, you know, even the family that I had known, even when it's gone, you know, she will still be here, and I'll be here for her, right? And, you know, certainly didn't know my father would pass and everything that would transpire. Our first year of marriage, talking about, you know, marriage and the difficulties. Our first year of marriage was probably the most difficult. Within a year, we had gotten married, purchased our first home, which was a process and some trauma even in that, right? That you know, talking about seed time and harvest and sowing for blessings and writing on our offering envelope what we were praying for and how we wanted it for His glory. Just buying our home was a process that is a testimony in of itself. But even beyond that, you know, we had our first home. My father died within our first year of marriage, right? And we had the birth of our first child, all within the first year of marriage. So there were all kinds of highs and lows within our first year that I think, you know, really, you know, certainly would not want to experience my father's loss, and not, you know, while I understand it, you know, I could never say grateful for his loss, but I'm grateful for the experience of it, you know, those issues or those challenges really binding us together even stronger.
Yeah, I mean, it was pressure cooked, right? So you hear about like honeymoon phase, but we didn't get a whole lot of time for a honeymoon phase because we were dealing with things that some couples, you know, it's 20, 30 years in the marriage before you deal with the loss of a parent, or it's several years before you welcome a child. And I was starting a tenure track position at Tougaloo and pregnant with our first child, and you know, there were a few complications there. So it was just kind of all of the things that most of the time are experienced over a span of years. That was 1 year. That was 12 to 14 months. We had gone through that together, which it sharpens you, right? We love the scripture in Proverbs, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. Repeat it over and over again. And so we had several days of adversity without, you know, even though we had known each other for several decades at that point, we didn't have the foundation as a married couple that you sometimes need to go through that. And so it was like building while we were living on the thing, we were building the foundation. But It sharpened us so much.
I forgot to mention, in the midst of all that stuff, I also ran for office.
Oh, right. There was a little campaign happening.
Yeah, there was a campaign. I'd never run for anything before.
And our daughter was born 3 weeks to the day in the same hospital after that his father passed in. So 3 weeks to the day that my father-in-law passed, and in the same hospital. So it was just layers and layers of grief, and then there was the joy of our daughter, but then the sadness of knowing she would not ever meet either one of his parents. It was just a roller coaster and a range of emotions that, we 30 years old and trying to adjust and pivot for this life in our heads that we had planned for ourselves. God was like, psych, I have something different for you to do, which at this point in retrospect, grateful not for the loss and the trauma and the grief, but for the promise that it was obvious that God had on our lives, and how he was preparing us for things that I think still we can't imagine, but our faith is so much stronger because we've been through so much. And so there's very little that can shake or, stoke fear in us, because, what we've been through, so it's like, okay. Yeah. And he taught me so much about not sweating the small things. And that's something that he used to say all the time, and a lot of people say it, it's very cliche, but what he meant by it was what he experienced in the loss of his mother. This was before Baba passed. I would get wound up about things. Sometimes little trivial things, like you bought the wrong laundry detergent. This not the scent I like Gain. This is that, that sort of thing. But then there would be some more serious, like financial things, right? We're in our first home, and we know the pressure that can bring. And he's still so calm and cool and collected over what seems catastrophic and devastating, and the amount of peace that gives me, I'm so extremely grateful for it. He is my calm in every single storm that I've experienced since 2013.
I did want to mention, and I appreciate that, baby. I did want to mention that I was also grateful that my father got to see us together and got to be at our wedding. And, I didn't have the benefit of my mother being there. I didn't have the benefit of either one of my parents, as she said, being there for the birth of our first child. But my dad loved Ebony, and I could see he loved her more than I think he liked her more than he liked me, right? Like, he thought she was so hilarious, right? Like her, one thing that and I think it shows in my work, right? Especially, and in her work too. We're a quick-witted bunch, right? Like, to live with us, our daughter the other day said something so hilarious. And
like yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday. And like, we could, like, you just gotta, if you're gonna live in our household, you gotta be ready to, you gotta be on top of it, right? She was, yesterday, never mind, I'll leave that one.
Anyway, the kids are right in step. Both, the 6-year-old and the 10-year-old. They don't miss a beat.
Yeah.
They roast us.
I'm usually the subject of most roasts. Like, my little one, she hold daddy down, but her and the other one.
Well, I'm sorry about the loss of both of your parents.
Thank you.
It's just a joy to hear you all talk about those pivotal moments that helped shape where you are today. I love the fact of how you pointed out that when you was in the accident, that she made it her business to come meet you, ran across the highway or however you got.
I did run across the highway.
Okay, you
it's some very cute shoes.
So that's awesome. That as helpmeets, we are that for our husbands as first ladies. It's helpmeets. That's what we are supposed to do. So that leads me to my next question to you, First Lady Ebony. Oftentimes, I just know as a pastor's wife, as a first lady in that setting, not being married to a political leader, our husbands are often scrutinized in the public, and they go through a lot. It's oftentimes, I know with my husband, they're analyzed, evaluated, they're questioned what they say, what they don't say, and what they don't do, and this type of thing. So my question is, we as women, we learn to silence ourselves. We don't say very much. We try to be very cautious and careful with what we say and don't say.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question is to you, with that being said, with your husband being pulled in different directions or what have you, how do you not allow those things to invade your marriage and your home? What's happened outside of the home? How do you make home a haven for your husband, for you, for your children? Because if the public could, they would invade and they would intoxicate it. But what do you do as a wife? And I think about the scripture in Proverbs that says, and I love how you all allude to your faith, a wise woman builds her house, but a foolish woman tears it down. And so it seems that you built your house, and we know that from the mayor and his accomplishments, and you both together, your family being strong today. So how do you keep it going as the first lady when we have to suppress our feelings and not express what we really probably want to say sometimes?
That's a great question. Okay. So one, as I mentioned, the Lord gifted us this relationship for various reasons, and one of them for me, I know, is for my peace, right? And so this man represents so much of the peace that I encounter day to day. We kind of joke sometimes that I sleep so well because he's up at night or in meetings and just kind of thinking through things. I don't worry about it at all, but I realize and I see the pressure that he's under, and even before he took on sort of a political position, even when he was in his law practice, even when he was before we were married and you were studying for the bar and in law school and that sort of thing, it occurred to me that this works for me when I am pouring into it and being supportive of the other person's needs. Love is action. Right? And so I can't expect to have anything reciprocated if I'm not pouring into it. And what our home represents for me is God's grace and his gift. None of us deserve any of the good things and the mercy and the grace that we get. But we can certainly approach it with gratitude. And so for me, it's exercising gratitude. Lord, I'm grateful for this man. I'm grateful for this marriage. I'm grateful for this relationship, these children, these things that you've given me charge over in my capacity. So I need to demonstrate that gratitude. I need to be appreciative of this capacity that I have by protecting it in any way that I can. And I realize that our lives are built with our tongues. And so it doesn't mean that I am wiser than the average bear and I don't want to pop off from time to time. But what the Lord has given me over the years is the wisdom to know how much power rests in what I say. And that's even what I say to my husband. It's even given me the foresight to know that I have no idea what he's been through in a day. Because I'm living a whole different existence from 9 to 5, if you will. But I imagine always the worst. That the worst has been said to him and about him, that he's had to encounter some impossible circumstances. And so when he crosses that threshold, I have the opportunity to lighten that. There's some power in that. I have the opportunity to soften him and let him drop his shoulders and let him take a deep breath. If I can do that, then I'm playing a position right in the kingdom of God that demonstrates the gratitude that I have for being, living this life at all. So I'm deeply grateful for that. And then I realized that I'm an example to the 2 young women that we are raising. And you have children, they watch everything. If you ever want to know what you're doing wrong, ask your children, because they have wonderful crib notes about how you could improve. But I can't throw away the opportunity to demonstrate to them how you encounter adversity, how you pour into people, how you demonstrate love, how you usher in peace. We sometimes think, we pray for peace, or we collect all these trinkets that we think bring us peace, like tangible things, not realizing that the power lies within us to harness our own peace and accept nothing less than that. And so that is my mission. That's my most difficult job, and it's my most rewarding job, to ensure that my home represents peace for everybody who inhabits it, and that's my husband, my girls, and myself. That when we are in that place, there is absolutely nothing, no flaming darts, right? We're going to extinguish that, so they can't penetrate that space, and we can't control folks' actions and their mouths and all of these things in the world. But this haven for us that the Lord has allowed us to have is just in this nuclear family. We can demonstrate the gratitude by protecting it and taking care of it and being serious about peace existing in that space. So I think it's just a mindset.
I love how you alluded to the idea that it's an opportunity, to serve the family, because most spouses, wives, don't look at it as an opportunity. They look at it as a mandate, an obligation. I don't really want to. I don't have to. I'm not getting what I need, etc., etc. But you have chosen to be that wise woman that Proverbs talks about, and building that place and building that home for your husband, that safe haven for him, that support system, that backbone. And that's what a lot of marriages are missing. They don't have the backbone.
Well, I mean,
in
it's
a lot of marriages.
Interesting we think about family as separate from all of these other things that we know pay dividends. So you don't think about your investment. I'm expecting this payout from a bank, and you put nothing into it. You wouldn't expect to receive anything from that account. If your balance is at zero, it's going to remain at zero. And then it's going to go into the negative because there's some fees and charges that are going to be assigned to that thing because you banked nothing into that. And so I'm not saying, I am certainly not perfect. I'm not always exercising that wisdom. But the Lord has given me enough grace to come back to that I can pour into a thing. And when He is relaxed, when He is at peace, I get to benefit from that too. So now we both relax. We're both at peace. We're both feeling our best. We're both ready to do extra things for one another. And we're both in a better position to be patient parents to our children, to be better friends, to be better, siblings and son and daughter. So it occurs to me that I have to think about the way that we treat the natural, which is sometimes so much more faithful than we do supernatural things. We got to shift that thinking. We don't expect a payout from something that we haven't given into. We only do that in relationships.
That's awesome.
I think, and that's, Ebony has been affirmation, along with our daughters, that the Lord still loves me, right? And, I'll be honest, I think about the fact that I lost my mother and father, and, this year, in fact, this June 18th to be specific, will mark the 21st year that my mother has been gone. I lost my mother at 20 years old. And so this will be the mark of me having not had her longer than I did have her. And if I'm blessed to live even the average lifespan, then the likelihood that I would have spent less time with my parents than I did with my parents, I'm sorry, the less time with my parents than I did without them, right, is highly likely, right? And so the affirmation of Him bringing an Ebony into my life, blessing us with our children, even our daughter being, born 3 weeks after my father died, right? It was affirmation that we needed, that He still loved us, right? That He didn't forget us. When we dated, right? For those people who are dating, right? And looking for somebody to take care of them, right? She just loved me, right? I was in law school. I was a broke law student, right? Not only broke just because you don't have things, while you're in that process. My mother had just died. My father was suspended while I was in law school for a good portion. And even insurance, we had to send money back home just to make sure that the house was taken care of. And my father, being the person that he was, instead of just trying to take care of his house, he was trying to take care of a staff that they had no work for, right? Because he was suspended for standing up, essentially, right? And so when she wanted to see me and I couldn't afford it, she would buy my ticket to come and see her in Atlanta, right? She had a job, right? She was, she was rich back then. Like
my little entry level position.
But I just seeing that, and people ask all the time, how do you deal with the things you deal with and everything else? First of all, I think I have a proper perspective about what it's really about. Try not to get high or try not to get too low.
Yeah.
But I'm living a dream. I get to go home and be with my best friend and laugh and joke and see these little people that are growing in their own personality. And really it inspires me to do things that she doesn't even ask for, just to see a smile on her face, right? Like, my wife is an excellent cook, but food in and of itself has a special meaning to her, right? She thinks about her grandmother and, being without, in many regards, and how she made things stretch and how she demonstrated love through food. Her dissertation was on food ways and mothering, right? And so, I know anytime she's doing something and she needs peace, she'll watch, is it Mashama Bailey?
Mashama Bailey.
Mashama Bailey.
Chef's Table.
Chef's Table. She'll watch it 1,000,000 times, right?
1,000,000 times.
And so for me, like little things like, we just recently did a renovation of our kitchen, right? Because I know that that's her place. She didn't ask for it, right? She didn't expect it, right? But that was important to me because, she brings me so much joy. She is the piece I need. That she is the sounding board that I can relay things to. And people don't know. People, think that I'm fiery, right? She's also fiercely loyal, right? So I'm really rescuing them from Ebony, right? Because if Ebony get out there, it ain't no good no more, right? Like, so because she's a lover and she loves hard, right? And so that gives me joy to see her joy because she's meant so much to me and so much to our family, and she's an amazing mother. She's a brilliant scholar, and I learn more about my wife each and every year, right? I just think, obviously in marriage, I learned when we were dating, and I think that's how she wrapped my boys together. When we were visiting Atlanta one time, she made some lasagna and invited us over. I was coming to Atlanta because I was actually in the area for my homecoming, and I came, and we're headed back to Jackson, and so she knew we were there, and so she made us lasagna. And my boys eating it like, man, you need to marry her. Like, made catfish for another friend, so she know how to work the food, right? But she's such a loving and giving personality that it just it makes you want to see her smile and give to her. So I'm just blessed immensely. I'm blessed immensely.
That's awesome. You all are answering several of the questions that I had, even about who was the chef in the family.
Now, don't get her. I can cook. I can cook. She's the chef. Okay. Well, I wouldn't dare say that I'm a chef in the family because that comes with consequences, right? But
he can cook.
I just time. I don't have a lot of time, but two, she enjoys cooking, right? And so I have the blessing, the fact that I don't have to figure out the time, because that's her gift to her family.
Yeah.
Do you cook every day?
I cook 4 days a week.
Okay. I used to cook every day, but now I'm reducing it to 3 days.
Yeah, I mean, you have to manage that expectation because the thing, I love to cook. I don't like grocery shopping,
exactly.
And one necessitates the other. And then there's the cleaning part and that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's a whole process. And then cooking every day creates waste most of the time because you're not going to eat all of that food every day unless you are just a perfect portioner and you know how to do that. So
and then leftovers taste better than
leftovers.
We eat leftovers.
We are not.
We ain't bougie like that.
No, leftovers are a must. That's part of the plan. So sometimes it's cooking 3 days and then that 4th day is leftovers and then there's pizza and takeout.
They eat pizza every Friday.
Every
I'll
Friday.
eat it sometimes.
Eat pizza
I
every
like
Friday.
gourmet pizza, right? Like I'm a little
you
bougie.
just said you weren't bougie.
Yeah, but when it comes to pizza, I can't.
We like Little Caesars.
They like Little Caesars. Like,
It's delicious.
But that leads me to this question that you've kind of already talked about with losing both of your parents and with you having the career that you have. I know that you are being pulled in multiple directions, and you've expressed, and so have you, about what you've done, pouring in, and how you gave her this kitchen. How do you balance out being the mayor and the responsibilities that comes along with that, with your wife and children? How do you pour into them? Do you all worship together? Are there designated family nights that you all have? Is there guaranteed vacation that you all go on to make sure that you give them that time? I know when President Barack Obama was in the White House, one of the things that he and Michelle agreed upon is at bedtime, he would have to kind of tuck the girls in for bed. I don't know if that happened every night or whatever, but what is it that you do to help balance it out?
Well, first of all, because I want, for those people trying to figure out their relationships, right? I don't want to give any impression that we're perfect by any stretch, right? So all of these things I can get better at, right? But we try to live a balanced life, right? I first and foremost, my faith is important to me, and that's primary. My family is very, very important to me. Especially having experienced so much early loss, right? And so, my mother was a flight attendant, and my father was a very busy guy, attorney in more than one state, and he traveled a lot. And so I learned early on that it's not so much the quantity of time, but the quality of time, right? And so that quality time is very important. And most days I have the benefit, no matter what's going on in the city, I get calls all the time, right? Like, I'll walk out and I'll take the call and deal with it. But for the most part, when I walk in that door, it's about family, right? She gonna tell me something about work. Let me tell you what happened today, right? And I'm gonna listen, and we're gonna laugh about it. And then our little girls, they care nothing about the city, right? Like,
what our jobs are.
They want to, Alake is like a little scientist. She want to show some new experiment. She got all kinds of facts that I have never heard of. Yeah. She told us today that on pancake commercials, they don't usually use syrup. They use motor oil because, the way that it's, who knows this, right? And little Nubia is a little comedian, and Nubia is your consummate nap buddy. If you sleepy, she could have just taken. Nubia gonna get in the bed and take a nap with you every single time, right?
That's the nap ministry.
But I enjoy the benefit of just having family and experience, and we try to be intentional about having experiences with each other. Probably not enough, right?
Yeah, I think I would add to that. Because it would seem like the formula would be, okay, every Tuesday or every Friday, this is what we do. But we find in the way that our lives are set up that can add more pressure to try to stick to a schedule for your leisure. And so, this even goes back to the question that you asked me about, maintaining the atmosphere of our home. If you know that your time is not necessarily limited, but it's at a premium, then that helps you to make decisions about, okay, I'm not going to argue with him about these socks on this floor because he's going to be out of town for the next 2 days. So let's just have
socks on the floor.
You have
right
socks on the floor.
That was her way. That was her way of letting me know that she recognized I got socks on the floor right now. But in my defense, I am renovating her laundry room, and we don't have a washer. Well, our laundry room, but I'm doing it. But we don't have a washer and dryer right now because it won't be delivered.
Those socks don't have to be on the floor. That was a nice try. But it helps you to acknowledge. He taught me that, and I can say, right, one of the many things I'm grateful for in our relationship is how much we get to sort of mentor each other. And because you when you enter a union and a partnership, you're coming with two whole experiences, two whole life experiences. And the beautiful part about that is you can benefit the experience of the other person. You can, if you choose to, with what you know and what you've seen and what you've been through, instead of bringing that on as this sort of trauma baggage to lay on that person and help me heal this. And so he has experienced loss in a different way than I have because of the loss of his parents. But what it taught him, one of the many things I think it taught him was, one, this value on time, the quality of the time that you spend together. One, his parents had traveled a lot, and then and during childhood, and so they were able to spend quality time together, and it wasn't about the quantity of time, and that was a different experience for me. And so he has taught me about the value of the time that we have, because none of us knows what that is, and I'm so grateful for it, because that'll help you drop your shoulders a little bit and take a deep breath, right? Like, I could be upset, I could be, ready to rage about this thing, or I can enjoy this weekend that we have, because the next 2 weekends are booked up with other things. Or I can enjoy this show and not even bring up the thing that's been stewing all day, because I get to choose how I spend this time, and I'm grateful for that, because it has set me free from thinking that you have to wage every battle and you have to make every point. You don't. You get to decide about how you're going to spend that day and how you're going to interact with your spouse. And so, I learned that from you.
I appreciate that. I want to say one thing, and I know they got to tell me something.
Really quick before you say what you got to say. Matt Malouf, did you schedule something with him?
I told him he could come after this interview briefly. He just wants to, I'm going to give him, look at something he wants to show me.
How much time should I tell him to wait?
How much longer do you think we have?
I have just 3 more questions.
Just 3 more questions, and then we're done. So.
Okay, that might be an hour with you.
Tell him 10 minutes. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. So,
you all's time.
Yeah. So, just a little funny thing. Like we've never stopped having fun with each other. Like we never stopped joking with each other, and and that's always been a part. Like, cause we're friends, right? Like we had a battle today, right? Of course, everybody's talking about the diss tracks of
rap beef.
The rap beefs of Drake and Kendrick Lamar, right? And I love all of them, to be clear, right? I just told her Drake had a good comeback, right? Like, what's Kendrick gonna do?
Drake ain't got no
and she's like, I ain't listening to it. You can't make me like anything about Drake, right? Which people might find ironic.
That's hilarious.
Right?
Yeah, I do not like that man's music.
And so, we do that. And one of the things, just simple for us, at the end of the day, we like watching TV together. And, we like documentaries, particularly murder documentaries.
True crime, babe.
True crime.
True crime.
And so we'll say, and that does reflect back on my former work as a criminal defense attorney. And so I have a perspective about it. Like, first of all, the Murdoch, Alec Murdoch case, she was obsessed with that, right? Like,
it's cool to have a criminal defense attorney in the house, right? So I have my own person, like, would that really happen? I watch Law and Order, I'm like, could they really say that? He's like, no, it wouldn't play out like that. So it's great for me, because I have him as a resource.
Right.
Yeah, and so we literally say, hey, baby, you want to watch murder together? Let's watch murder, right?
I've enjoyed this interview. Dare will not hold you up any longer. There are couples right now that's struggling to stay married. We have couples who are married legally by paper, yet they are living separate lives. And we have families, as we talk, that are broken, that's in the process of being broken, have filed for divorce, is divorcing.
Yeah.
If that couple happens to read this news article, what would your advice be? What would you say to that couple that could possibly cause them to make a turnaround in their decision? Marriage is not easy. I'm the first to say that it's not easy. It's not a perfect, there's no perfect day. You learn it every day. I don't think anything prepares you for marriage besides God, besides seeking Him first. What would you say? And I think most couples, I wrote an article a few weeks ago that most couples, many contemplate divorce at some point. What would you say to that couple? What would you advise them?
I think the first thing that I would say is marriage is a choice that you make every day.
Right.
And it is also this tremendous opportunity that I believe the Lord gives us to stir up the gifts that are in us. Right? Like your spouse, your partner should be that iron that sharpens your iron. And that's not to say that they are giving, and you are benefiting.
Right.
It is the opportunity to have a mirror shown on yourself. It's the opportunity. I once heard someone say that marriage shows you just how selfish you've always been. And so it is, I would encourage, right? It is so easy for the enemy to convince us that the problem is the other person, that the problem is the spouse. And now there's some extenuating circumstances where there's abuse and infidelity. Those are, I think those are separate. But in those things, those other circumstances that feel very serious, there is always the opportunity to take the log out of your own eye while you're trying to, take the splinter out of your spouse's eye. You could have a log in yours. How could I improve? How could I benefit in this circumstance? How could I shift my thinking to not bring strife into this discussion or this argument? Is this that important? There are two really practical things that I remind myself of all the time. When we first got married, he had this shaving case that he would leave out on the countertop in the bathroom, and it drove me crazy. It was like, razor wires coming all out of it. And I mean, it was just, I would like clean it up very angrily, right? Like fussing under my breath and put it under the thing and talk about how much it got on my nerves. And, the Lord revealed to me, he said, well, daughter, two things could be the case here. One, the shaving kit could be at somebody else's house. Hello, God. Two, the shaving kit could be in some memory chest because he has left this earth and your time has been cut short with him. And it was nothing but the Lord that did that. I mean, that was when we first got married. And then, fast forward, there's this closet door, it's this suit closet. And I'm a person, I want the doors closed, I want the cabinets closed, I'm a little OCD like that. And he would leave this door open all the time. And I started fussing to myself and, closing the door and always having to close the door. And the Lord brought back to me that if he wasn't here on this earth anymore to leave this door open, how much would you long for him to be here just to leave this door open? And now, every time I walk past that open door, I thank the Lord. I thank the Lord that he's here. I thank the Lord for his health. I thank the Lord for, as the old folks would say, he's in his right mind. I thank the Lord that I have the opportunity to encourage him. And when I'm doing that, I'm checking myself. I'm checking my attitude. I'm checking my spirit. I'm not perfect. I'm leaving things open and out and over. I'm doing things that gnaw at his nerves. And I could be working on that instead of being annoyed at any of these things that he does, and not making marriage problems out of roommate problems, right? Those things can either be fixed or you can get over yourself and realize that you are not the perfect solution to anybody's problem. And so I would just encourage that couple to focus, the individuals in that couple, to focus on what you can do to improve your circumstance. And start to, it will immediately and automatically, and pray about that thing. Pray sincerely and fervently. Lord, show me myself. Show me what I could do. Show me how I could be the best Ebony that I can be. And as that starts to happen and you're sincere about it, you start to see your spouse in a different light. You start to see them hopefully in the way that the Lord sees them, because the Lord loves us with this love that's unimaginable. And we should get glimpses of that as we look at our spouse. And you will, as you start to even see yourself as malleable, as you start to see yourself as able to be better than you are today, the next day and the next day and the next day. Focus on yourself and what you bring. And that's something that you can take out, outside of marriage. You can take that to the workplace. You can take that to your neighborhood. You can take that to your church. when you start focusing on how you could be better for that scenario, I mean, and you wouldn't believe how it transforms the relationship. The relationship. And then the person just starts bringing home chocolate covered strawberries, and the person just starts the person just starts making you something to drink when they make them something to drink.
That was another hint.
Yeah, but you know, I could go.
I get. She wants dark chocolate.
Yeah, but I mean, the person just starts to pay attention to. I guarantee you, and we do it again. We do it in life. When you start to study a little more at school and you start to be conscientious note taking, you start to sit at the front of the class and you start to be a little bit early and you go to office hours, does your professor not notice? Does that relationship not change? Is there not a benefit to that? So it's the same thing with relationship. I guarantee you see a change.
This one I would respectfully suggest that their foundation, that they're mindful of their foundation, one being in the Lord.
Amen. Yes.
Another thing that I think helped us, obviously we certainly didn't know that we would endure all the things we did in the first year of our marriage. But I'm grateful to my parents, and I steal this from her, my parents in love, right? People say my parents-in-law, my parents in love, that they insisted, that as they gave us their blessing for us to get married, that we go to premarital counseling.
Yes.
And so I
faith-based Christian.
Faith-based premarital counseling, and I want to make certain that people understand that it was beneficial to us that we were able to go through a program that was not only faith-based but also clinically trained, right? And so we enjoyed that, and we appreciated that. And then, kind of just piggybacking off of what Ebony said, we're all looking for this perfect person, right? But we fail to realize we're not a perfect person, right? We have an expectation of perfection, but that's not what we deliver, right? And so it's always good to be introspective on who you are, and check yourself. And there are rough moments, like Ebony and I, it's not frequent, but we fuss, right? And she's, when she gets passive aggressive, I know I'm in trouble, right? I know her cues. She knows mine, right?
But you even learn how to do that better, right? Yeah. As you work on it, right? Because you're gonna disagree on things just by nature, by human nature, but you learn how to do that respectfully.
When to let it go.
And when to let it go, and more often than not, you can let that thing go. And you must, especially as Christians, you gotta let God handle the person that He made, right? So how I'm gonna change this grown man's mind about something that I think his mind should be changed about when the Creator is sitting there waiting for you? When you go and turn it over to me, daughter, because you got this, because I don't. The Lord can say, peace be still. The Lord can do those things. And it gives you a perfect peace. Okay, God, I'm not going to fuss anymore about these socks. You going to lay it on his heart to pick it up. That was just an example. But it just sets you free, because I'm not in charge of anybody but me. And that's who the Lord going to ask me about. And what did you do, Ebony? And I need to be able to say some things to him, and he's gonna already know. He ain't gonna ask me how I try to control my husband's thinking. What did you do about your thinking, Ebony? So
last question, Ms. Hampton asked me to ask you all this question. The publisher for the Mississippi Link newspaper, we have newlyweds. What are the essentials that every married couple should have? What's most important? What are those key components that will make your marriage last?
I know that people take this as being cliche, right? But we've tried it another way, where we were dating and it didn't work. That you have to have your faith at the core of your marriage and your relationship, right? I think that a friendship, having an actual friendship and relationship, and being mindful and understanding that whoever you were before you got married, that's going to be amplified once if you were friends before you got married, then you know, that friendship would only grow in marriage.
Right.
If you had a toxic relationship before you got married, then when you bring in children, when you bring in
mortgages,
you know, investments together, when you bring in, you know, all of these lived experiences that you're going to have together, then all of that is going to be amplified. So you need to be mindful of that.
I think I'll go back to something that I already said. It's, you know, marriage is a choice that you make every single day.
Okay.
And it's an opportunity to be the person that the Lord destined you to be.
I think it's important that the experiences that you have, going back to quantity versus quality, that, you know, those quality experiences are the things that, you know, you reflect on in moments of trauma and moments of the critical moments, right? So it brings you back, it grounds you, you know. She talked about that suit closet, right? Strategically, I have our engagement and wedding photos right next to that closet, right? So, you know, I didn't know that was a problem until this very interview,
It's
right?
not a problem anymore. I love it. I love it open.
But, you know, every day when we walk into our bedroom, the first thing we see is our engagement and our wedding, right? That's the first thing we see. This anniversary, you know, I was so excited. Like, I always ask her what she wants, and that comes, my mother would tell me, you know, she would tell us every holiday, every birthday, she would tell us exactly what she wanted, right? And if you got her something else, you know, she was grateful, but she didn't really ask for much, right? She said, you know, it's nice. It's not what I asked for, but it's nice, right? And so we quickly got the hint that we would get her what she asked for, and it made her happy, and we were happy to see that she got what she wanted. And so we, you know, we do that. Like, we do that same thing. Now, this anniversary, I didn't ask her what she wanted, right? And because I know my wife, you know, and I couldn't wait to show her. Like, I wanted to tell her so many times. And it's something I saw on an advertisement, but I knew it would be perfect for her. I got like almost like a framed disc album, almost. It's in the shape of a record, but it's the words from our wedding song, right? And the crazy thing is, when you read those words, it's not just a beautiful love song. It really reflects on our marriage, right? So Stevie Wonder's "You and I," right? Yeah.
I think the last thing I would say is that you are the only two people who get to speak over, into, and about your marriage with any validity. That's it. So, you know, don't run to family complaining about your spouse. As difficult as that may be to do, they're not a part of that relationship. And people, you can't stop outside people from speculating and talking about your marriage, but they're not speaking about it with any validity, because y'all talk to each other. Don't talk outward, talk inward.
And Ebony and I know that the enemy wants us not to be together.
The enemy hates marriage.
We were prophesied over on our wedding day, right? That Lumumba would be known as the one who helps, right? And so we know that you know, that there was cheering in heaven and you know, sobbing in hell the day that we our union came together, right? Because we're not going to only, you know, be married as a reflection of our love for one another, but our reflection of our love for the Lord, right?
To glorify God.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we pray that, speak that prophecy, give God back His words, and now our girls say that.
Our girls,
they're an extension.
We're very, and I would say this about not only married, you know, but people with children. Protect your children's innocence as long as you possibly can. There are things that we don't allow our children to watch on Disney, right? Because, you know, they don't need to be introduced to adult situations at such a young age. We need to allow them to be children, right? And you just find that there's so much more peace, you know, so much more discipline out of your children when you protect. You know, sometimes we think things are cute when they emulate adult things, right? But the reality is that their young minds aren't prepared for that, right? And so you need to protect your children's innocence as long as you can.
And be the example, the example of an ideal family that our children should be in their household.
Right.
For whatever that looks like. Be that example for whatever your household makeup is. That's the family that they should long to create for themselves, because it is so nourishing and it is so whole and wholesome. They shouldn't have to look to sitcoms and wish that there was a different circumstance. No matter what your makeup is and your tax bracket is, your children should be able to witness in their home what they long to create for themselves.
The last thing I want to say, and I got to run to this guy here, but the thing that I'm most, I didn't even know you were still there. The thing that I'm most proud of, a legacy that I want to leave my children and that I'm grateful for, is that I'm blessed, while they weren't perfect, and I don't profess that they were, that I'm blessed to come from a legacy of men who loved their families. My father, he was very honest with who he was and his challenges, but he loved his family.
Right.
And what drove him was fighting for his family, fighting for a better condition than we had yet seen. My grandfather, the rumor or the story on the block was that he built a wall because his wife was so beautiful and he didn't want the world looking at his wife, right? But they had 8 beautiful children. He found time. My aunts, I have one aunt today out of the 3 that knows how to drive. The rest have never driven a day in their life because their dad took them everywhere they needed to go their whole lives, right? And he put 8 children. While he wasn't a wealthy man, he drove the school bus, he drove a taxi, he managed a grocery store. He put 8 children through Catholic school because he wanted to give them the best education he could give them, right? His father, and this is where I'll end, my great-grandfather, his wife died giving birth to my grandfather's younger brother. It's just the 2 of them, my grandfather and my Uncle Edward, and they both have passed away now. But she died giving birth to him. And so he was raising his 2 boys during the Great Depression. And he lost his boys. He had to put them in foster care, right? And, he worked and he worked and he worked until he could go back and get his boys. And they were inseparable after that. One thing that everybody knew is that he loved his sons and his sons loved him. And so, that's my proudest legacy. My mother would joke when I was a little boy, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'd say a daddy. Because in my mind, I couldn't think of any better job than to be a daddy. And so I'm grateful that the Lord blessed me with not only being a father, but blessed me with a virtuous woman, a talented woman. I talked about how I learned so much about Ebony. My wife started painting, just a couple of years ago, a gift she always had. I never knew it. But, people now pay her for her art, right? And, just watching all of these talents just spew out of her. She's an amazing, orator. She is a gifted painter. She is a gifted writer, right? She can interview just about anybody. People ask me to moderate things. I'm saying, I don't have that skill. I can talk on a panel, but I can't moderate, right? Like, it's a certain skill, and I'm amazed by her. I tell her I'm her biggest fan, right? I'm her biggest fan. So.
A man that I've never had to feel small to be with.
Okay.
Let me tell y'all something. I'm tell you what y'all say. This is the last thing I'm gonna say 10 times. Both of y'all.
That was the last thing. We there.
I got that from him.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity.
Thank
This
you.
is a subject we love.
Thank you.
I turned it down.
I would have married you.
Come on.
I turned it down.